Okay, Assalamu alaikum. How are you, everyone? I think we are live. Let's go, minions, parrot and boy. Okay, yes, let's go, minions. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Hope you are all doing very, very well. Sorry about that. Audio okay, excellent, thank you. All right, let's get started. Assalamu alaikum, Muhammad Hassan, Roman Lopez. All right, good, let's get started. Okay, of sharing what I have to share today. All right, yeah, so I just thought I'd talk about a verse in Surah Taha. I put it in the description for the stream beforehand. I think that when you schedule a stream, you can actually read the description. I'm not so sure, so I started doing posts at the same time. But either way, this is the verse that I wanted to discuss a little bit. It says, this is in the beginning of Surah Taha, when God is speaking to Musa alayhi salam. And you have the famous verse which talks about the goal of Salah. So, it says, Inni ana Allahu la ilaha illa ana fa'budni wa aqim as-salata dhikri, and establish Salah for my remembrance. The next verse says, Inna as-sa'ata atiyatun akadu ukhfiha litujza kullu nafsin bima tas'a. Very interesting verse, especially that middle part, which is what caught my attention this week. So I thought, let me talk about it. It says, Akadu ukhfiha, right? So it says, indeed, the hour is coming. I almost conceal it, so that every soul may be recompensed according to that for which it strives. Inna as-sa'ata atiyatun akadu ukhfiha. This is almost like something in brackets. You would sort of say, almost in like kind of quotation marks, right? So, the verse could have been, Inna as-sa'ata atiyatun, the hour is coming, litujza kullu nafsin bima tas'a, so that every soul can be recompensed according to what it strives. It's like something just inserted in the middle. Akadu ukhfiha. I almost concealed it. I think, if I remember, some of the translations would make it seem as if it says, as if this was saying, my plan is to conceal it. No, the verse is saying here, akadu is when you're saying, I almost do something. I was about to do something, but I didn't do it. Or I tried to do something, I couldn't quite do it. Of course, for God, it isn't the latter. It's that he almost decided to do this. Okay, so it said, akadu ukhfiha. I'm almost concealing it. It's not something, it's something known the world over right now, the judgment, that the hour is coming, right? I think everyone around the world has this idea that a judgment day will come. Okay, but this was something that God said, akadu ukhfiha, I almost hid this, the knowledge of the hour. Meaning that God had almost decided, and I'm just putting this, almost decided. I don't know if you can say that about God, or he decided or not. It is, of course, all in accordance with his attributes and how God is. It wasn't that he's thinking, I will or I won't, and which one should I do? No, it was, and then it came down to his qualities of mercy and justice and compassion for his creation. But also remember that, and we'll come to this again, that the purpose of this world, of everything, is to see the actions, what people will do. And so that's what I wanted to link with this, because it says, and I'm saying that, God is saying, I almost decided not to reveal knowledge of the coming hour. So we wouldn't have heard about it from the messengers, we wouldn't have heard about it from the books, nor from any other source. There would have been no, people having dreams of Day of Judgment or anything like that. God could have concealed completely knowledge of the hour. And just think, in your mind, as sort of a thought experiment, how the world would be, how people would be, how humanity would be, without knowing anything about Judgment Day, the upcoming hour, but it was still a reality. and then it just sort of almost surprises us all, right? It surprises us all when we arrive there. But why would God have almost done this? Okay, so there's a double meaning in the verse. The first part is basically saying the hour is coming. Okay, and why is it coming? So that every soul can be recompensated for what it did. But the other double meaning inside is I almost concealed it. Okay, one is that I almost conceal it so that every soul could become recompensed solely for what it freely strove to do, without any fear of punishment or any hope of reward. So imagine that for yourself now. If we had not any knowledge of the hour, or even if not for yourself, or just the idea of humanity around you, okay, if there was no fear of judgment or hope for reward, how would people behave? Well, firstly, their behavior would be solely because of how they choose to behave. There would be no motivating fear or hope, right, for something which is a reality, but it wouldn't even be there. Nobody would know about it. Okay, so the double meaning in this is that I almost concealed it so that every soul could be recompensated solely for what it chose to strive to, what it chose to do, without any thought of an hour coming. And I'm linking this to what I've mentioned many times in Reddit posts, on news streams as well, and in videos, that in the end what God is looking for is the actions. The actions are what we will be judged for on the day of judgment. Okay, and this I think helps us to see that a bit more clearly as well, because God is saying, I almost concealed it so that people would only be recompensated for what they will do. And of course that is what they will. They still, even with the truth of a judgment coming or reward, people are still going to be recompensated for what they do. But now, of course, they are working as well. They are working, doing, striving with a hope and a fear in mind. Okay, and that is how can I say this? Well, almost less pure in terms of what you decide to do. When you decide to do for the sake of what you have decided to do, right? Rather than God's threat or His promise. Okay, I'm not sure if I'm making that clear, but even when you're working or you're doing actions because of a fear of punishment of the hour, or hope for paradise, you're still working. Those actions are still what will be rewarded or punished. Okay, but God is saying here, I almost concealed it so that even that would not be in the equation, or would just be solely what you decide to do in this world. So this brings us back to the importance of actions, and that it is the actions that God will judge. So much so that He almost concealed the hour completely. And I thought, okay, that's the main idea. But I thought, let me look, through, present some of the verses which mention this word sa'a, okay, sa'i, the striving, because there are many verses which talk about that. So here we have Surah An-Najm. We have the famous string of verses where, first of all, it starts with saying, were they not informed about what was in the scrolls of بما في صحف موسى وإبراهيم الذي وفى, in the scrolls of Musa and of Ibrahim, who was who fulfilled his word, which is ألا تزر وازرة وزر أخرى. Okay, that no bearer of a burden will bear the burden of another. Now, when we talk about this, what are we talking about? We're obviously talking about actions. Nobody will be held accountable for the actions of another person. Okay, so we're not talking about, everybody understands this verse as not meaning about faith. Okay, nobody will be held accountable for the faith of somebody else, or for the belief or disbelief of somebody else, right? Everybody knows that. They don't think that this verse is talking about, everybody knows that this verse is talking about actions. Okay, so the next verses are of course also talking about actions. وَأَنَّ لَيْسَ لِلْإِنسَانِ إِلَّا مَا سَعَى. And I'm sorry, but I double pasted the Arabic here. Yeah, it should have وَأَنَّ لَيْسَ لِلْإِنسَانِ إِلَّا مَا سَعَى. And there is nothing for the insan, for the human being, except what he strives. He will have nothing except what he strives. What he gets is what he strives for. Okay, so again, bring that back to the first verse. In the sa'atu atiyatun akadu ukhfiha, the hour is coming, I almost concealed, so that every soul can be recompensated for what it did. And again over here, the next verse, وَأَنَّ سَعْيَهُ سَوْفَ يُرَى. Okay, and his efforts, his striving, what he did, his actions are going to be seen. وَأَنَّ سَعْيَهُ سَوْفَ يُرَى, they will be seen. Right? And of course, these are very big, general, sort of mystical verses. I mean, they can even be applied to the worldly life, right? The human being gets nothing but what he strives for. And your striving in this world will be seen by people in this world as well. But of course, here I'm speaking about in terms of the next life, that you will see your own actions, right? The Surah Al-Zalzala, the Surah of the earthquake, which says, فَمَنْ يَعْمَلْ مِثْقَالَ ذَرَّةٍ خَيْرًا يَرَى. So whoever does an atom's weight of good deed will see it, and whoever does an atom's weight of bad deeds will see it. So again, we're talking about amal, actions. وَأَنَّ سَعْيَهُ سَوْفَ يُرَى. And his sa'i, his efforts, are going to be seen. ثُمَّ يُجْزَاهُ الْجَزَاءُ الْأَوْفَى. Okay? And then he will be recompensed with the fullest recompense. And again, that takes us back to that first verse, right? لِتُجْزَى كُلُّ نَفْسٍ بِمَا تَسْعَى. تُجْزَى, right? The recompense for what it has done, right? The jaza is for your sa'i. It's for what you strive for, what you do. And there's some verses here which I always like to bring up to for those who object to the idea that paradise and heaven and all of this is just by actions. One of the main verses I like to bring up for that is in the same surah, Surah Al-Najm. Says here, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم وَلِلَّهِ مَا فِي السَّمَاوَاتِ وَمَا فِي الْأَرْضِ. And to God belongs whatever is in the heavens and earth. لِيَجْزِيَ الَّذِينَ أَسَاءُوا, so that he may recompense those who do evil. الَّذِينَ أَسَاءُوا بِمَا عَمِلُوا, by what they actually did. بِمَا عَمِلُوا, not what they believed, not what they thought, not what they held dogmatically. No, by what they did. بِمَا عَمِلُوا وَيَجْزِيَ الَّذِينَ أَحْسَنُوا بِالْحُسْنَى, and so that he may recompense those who did good with goodness. Right? And we have a similar surah, a verse in Surah Al-Rahman, right? هَلْ جَزَاءُ الْإِحْسَانِ إِلَّا الْإِحْسَانِ. Is the jaza, the reward of goodness, of ihsan, anything but ihsan, right? And the next verse, it says, describing these people. So the next verse, it says, الَّذِينَ. We mentioned this before, that when the verse mentions a group of people, mentions something about some people, and the next verse says, الَّذِينَ, those who, then it's a definition, alif lam at-ta'rif, it's the defining. Like we said, وَيُبَشِّرَ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ, that God sent the messenger so that he may give good tidings to the mu'mineen. الَّذِينَ يَعْمَلُونَ الصَّالِحَاتِ, those who do good deeds. So the mu'mineen are those who do good deeds. But so this is defining the previous verse. It says, الَّذِينَ يَجْتَنِبُونَ كَبَائِرَ الْإِثْمِ وَالْفَوَاحِشِ, those who stay away from all the major sins and immoralities. إِلَّا اللَّمَمْ, okay, and they may only fall into the small things, the slight things. إِنَّ رَبَّكَ وَاسِعُ الْمَغْفِرَةِ, truly your Lord is, vast in forgiveness. هُوَ أَعْلَمُ بِكُمْ إِذْ أَنْشَأَكُمْ مِنَ الْأَرْضِ, he knew you better, he was most knowledgeable of you when he produced you from the earth. وَإِذْ أَنْتُمْ أَجِنَّةٌ فِي بُطُونِ أُمَّهَاتِكُمْ, and when you were just fetuses in the wombs of your mothers. فَلَا تُزَكُّوا أَنفُسَكُمْ, don't claim purity for yourselves. He is the most knowing of those who have taqwa. هُوَ أَعْلَمُ بِمَنِ اتَّقَى. Okay, so this again just highlighting that, okay, that we're talking about actions, and here some of that means staying away from the major sins and immoralities. Some people have asked me that sometimes, what are those major ones? The major ones are those things which God has has threatened punishment for in the Qur'an, or for which there is a worldly punishment. Okay, so those are the major things. Here's another verse. This is in يوم يتذكر الإنسان ما سعى. Okay, the day when the human being shall remember what we strove for. Okay, and this is in Surah النازعات. يوم يتذكر الإنسان ما سعى وبرزت الجحيم لمن يرى. Okay, and then the next verses say that, and then hell is kindled for those for everybody who can see it. Another verse here, it says here, من كان يريد العاجلة. Okay, whoever should desire the immediate, the things now, عجلنا له فيها ما نشاء. We will hasten for him from it what we will, what we intend. So it's talking about this worldly life. Whoever wants the things of this worldly life, al-ajila, okay, instead of al-akhirah, okay, the immediate rather than the hereafter, we will bring for it, we'll hasten for him of it what we will. Okay, لمن نريد, to whoever we will. ثم جعلنا له جهنم يصلاها مذموما مدحورا. And then we will cause him to burn into hell, censored and banished. وَمَنْ أَرَادَ الْآخِرَةَ, but whoever desires the hereafter and exerts effort to it, وَسَعَى لَهَا سَعْيَهَا, and he does the effort for it, the effort for the afterlife. Okay, وَهُوَ مُؤْمِنٌ, and he has faith. فَأُولَٰئِكَ كَانَ سَعْيُهُمْ مَشْكُورًا, those have their sa'i being appreciated. Okay, mashkura, they are being appreciated by God. This verse is always brought up by those who say, who want to say that no, you can do many, many good deeds, and if you don't have faith, then it's not going to be accepted. And these verses prove that no, they don't. So these verses, they say, قُلْ هَلْ نُنَبِّئُكُمْ بِالْأَخْسَرِينَ أَعْمَالًا, shall I tell you of those who are the greatest losses in terms of their deeds? Okay, الذين هل ننبئكم بالأخسرين أعمالا, those who are most losers in terms of their deeds. الذين ضل سعيهم, those whose efforts were astray. ضل in ضلال. Okay, ضل سعيهم في الحياة الدنيا, their deeds were astray in this worldly life, while they thought وهم يحسبون أنهم يحسنون صنعا, they thought they were doing good deeds. They weren't doing good deeds. Okay, they were engaged in terrible deeds. Okay, in dalal. Okay, but they thought they were doing good deeds. All right, the classic example, of course, are groups like ISIS or any extremist groups. Okay, they go around doing the worst atrocities, and they think they're actually doing God's work. Okay, those are the people who are the furthest astray in deeds. Okay, it's not the person who does good deeds, is actually doing really good deeds, and everybody recognizes that these are good deeds, and then no, sorry, they're not going to be accepted because he doesn't believe. No, the furthest you can go, the furthest point astray in terms of your deeds being astray is to do terrible deeds, thinking they are good deeds. Okay, that's the really al-akhsarin a'mala, the worst. Okay, that's the furthest. All right, the greatest in loss. You do terrible deeds, and you think they're good, and in Day of Judgment you're going to get punished for them. Okay, it's not the one who's just isn't rewarded for deeds because he doesn't believe. Okay, which isn't true. And it says here, the next verse will say that أولئك الذين كفروا بآيات ربهم, those are the ones who had kufr in the verses of their Lord. Okay, not disbelieved, kufr in the verses of their Lord and the meeting with him. Okay, if they had faith in those things, they would not have acted in this way. Right? They would not have. Right? It's these things that made them do these terrible deeds. فَحَبِطَتْ أَعْمَالُهُم. Okay, so their deeds became lowly. Okay, حَبِطَتْ أَعْمَالُهُم فَلَا نُقِيمُ لَهُمْ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ وَزْنًا. So we will not give any weight to these deeds. They will not have any weight. Okay. Interesting thing about that, لَا نُقِيمُ لَهُمْ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ وَزْنًا. They were not going to give them any weight on the Day of Judgment. The scales on Day of Judgment that are described as, whoever's good deeds are light and whoever's good deeds are heavy. It's not described in terms of whoever's good deeds are heavy and whoever's bad deeds are heavy. Okay, it seems as if bad deeds are actually weightless on the Day of Judgment. Okay, because it seems that it's almost like it's one scale. Okay, we tend to think about those two-pan scales. Good deeds on one side, bad deeds on the other side, and we see which side is heavier. Okay, but I'm rethinking about that because there's no verses which talk about that whoever's bad deeds are heavy. No, it just talks about whoever's good deeds are heavy, whoever's good deeds are light. Okay, and that takes us to what reality is. Okay, in reality, the things which are real are the good things, right? The darkness is not real. Darkness is not something which is real. It is the absence of light. Okay, so all these evil deeds, all right, that people do on the Day of Judgment, they have no weight. They have no weight, zero weight. Okay, it's not that they have sort of negative weight, if you know what I mean. So it's something to think about. I mean, maybe we should do a stream about that, about the balances. But look through those verses and you'll see that it's always mentioned about how either the good deeds are light or heavy. It's not mentioned in the bad deeds. Very, very interesting. Here's another verse. وَتَقَطَّعُوا. It comes after a bunch of verses discussing the prophets. This is in Surah Al-Anbiya, the Surah of the prophets. وَتَقَطَّعُوا أَمْرَهُم بَيْنَهُم كُلٌّ إِلَيْنَا رَاجِعُونَ. And yet they divided their affairs among themselves. All of them will return to us. فَمَنْ يَعْمَلْ مِنَ الصَّالِحَاتِ. So whoever does righteous deeds while he has faith, وهو مؤمن فلا كفران لسعيه. Okay, and this is another way to understand kufr, because people want to understand what kufr means. Here's another example of use of kufr. فلا كفران لسعيه. His kufr, his sa'i, his striving will not be denied. Okay, من يعمل من الصالحات وهو مؤمن فلا كفران لسعيه. His sa'i, his efforts are not going to be denied. وإنا له لكاتبون. And we will indeed write it, we will record this, we will record his striving. Okay, another verse, I think this is the last slide I have for you. It says, وجوه, this is in Surah Al-Ghashiyah, so again mentioning, it's one of the early surahs. It's amazing how the Quran always, it's all tied together, right? So وجوه يومئذ ناعمة. Okay, faces that day will be in pleasure, will be sort of like, na'ima means like smooth and content, right? لسعيها راضية. Okay, with their effort, their striving, they are satisfied. لسعيها راضية. The sa'i, for their sa'i, they are happy. Okay, they are pleased with it. في جنة عالية, in an elevated Jannah. Meaning what? Meaning the sa'i is what will take you to Jannah. Like all the other verses in the Quran, ادخلوا الجنة بما كنتم تعملون. Enter Jannah by what you used to do. Okay, so this fits in nicely with that. All right, okay. Thank you very much. That's the end of that. Let's see. All right, let me have a quick look at the comments before I see who I have to bring on. We have somebody backstage, Roman. Assalamu alaikum, I'll bring you on in a minute. I'll just make sure there's nothing for me. Yeah, verse should be translated as sign, that's true. These verses are in signs. Assalamu alaikum. It's the first time we have you. Binish Ansari, thank you for coming on. It means God reveals that the day of judgment will happen, but not when. I think that's why it says almost. Well, it doesn't talk about being revealed, right? So this verse, it says, "Akad ukhfiha." I almost conceal it. It's not. I almost reveal it. Right? It's not akadu, unveil it. Not akadu akshifuha or something. I don't know. But I almost conceal it. Right? And it's a way to. I mean, linguistically, that's what literally it says. Okay, akadu, I almost conceal it. Right? The hour is coming. I almost conceal it. Right? So it's another way to look at it. Okay, what do we have here? Assalamu alaikum, Alex. I always thought it meant how the last day comes to an end by the sun and the moon joining. So scientifically, maybe you could come up with a possible. Okay, I think maybe that's somebody. Maybe you're talking to somebody else, not me, right? Maybe you can make a connection with a room 41. Write that in and have a look. Assalamu alaikum. I was late today, so I have to start from the beginning. No problem. Assalamu alaikum. All right, Roman, I'm going to bring you on. Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum assalam. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, I can hear you. How are you?
Excellent. Very good. How are you?
Alhamdulillah. Where are you joining us from today?
I am in California, Northern California. Very smoky, unfortunately. The wildfires. It's awful.
Oh, there's wildfires. No, I haven't been keeping up with the news, to be honest, so I don't know what's going on in the world. There's been wildfires there since when?
Probably the last 5 years, pretty much. No, every summer it's apocalyptic almost, they say. You got this bright red sun behind the smoke. It's 100+ degrees plus the smoke. It's hard, but we make it work.
Alhamdulillah.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. What do you have?
So this topic, I was super excited you brought this up because I think it's super interesting. The first thing I want to point out, I think, as regards to the hour as a concept in the Quran, I think the same way the Quran is responding to, like you've brought up in the past, the questions of Prophet's contemporaries and their concerns, and it's responding to them. In that same way, it's responding to the concepts and ideas of the Ahlul Kitab, like the Christians and the Jews. Like this idea of the hour comes from, I think, or has its roots in the New Testament. Like in a verse in Matthew, it says, "But concerning the day and the hour, no one knows, not even the angels, nor the Son, but only the Father." So this idea of the hour, I don't know if it has Judaic roots as well, but definitely the New Testament, which brings me to another ayat in Surat An-Nahl, the bee, in ayat 77. It talks about, for sure.
Go on, read it first while I bring it up.
77.
It says, number what, sorry?
77.
77, okay.
It says, "The matter of the hour is not but a twinkling of the eye, or it is nearer," kind of idea. This idea of blink of an eye. The hour is in a blink of an eye, which also has its background, I think, in a New Testament verse as well, Corinthians. It says, "In an instant, in the blink of an eye, the last trumpet, the trumpet will sound, the dead will be raised incorruptible, and we shall be changed, like into another form." Which is super interesting, I think.
يوم تبدل الأرض غير الأرض, right? So when the earth will be changed into another earth. There are some ideas that there are sort of two. There are like the judgment comes in. The next life comes in stages. So there's going to be a sort of a paradise in this world first before the end of the whole, sort of cosmos kind of thing. There is that idea as well. There are some traditions and stuff in that, and it can be some verses in the Quran can be read like that. There's the day of this and the day of that. They are separate, right?
Right. Yeah. I think it can be really revealing, knowing what the Christians and Jews were thinking at that time, because the Quran, it's certainly like addressing them in a language and ideas that they understand, that hit home to them, and that's something I find really valuable. As far as I just started reading the Old Testament, finding it super interesting, like certain parallels I'm finding in stories in the Quran. It's definitely interesting. The main thing when you brought up this ayat of almost concealing the hour, I immediately thought of a verse in a poem by Ibn Attallah, the Shadhili Sufi, famous writer too. I think 12th century, maybe. Yeah, exactly. Fantastic.
The one with the
writer.
hikam,
Yeah, that's exactly that book.
Wisdoms,
But one of his verses, it makes me think of this ayat a lot. It goes, "Were the light of certitude to shine, you would see the hereafter so near that you could not move toward it, and you would see that the eclipse of extinction had come over the beauties of the world." And this verse for me kind of illustrates this immediacy and intimacy. Someone who is more awake, I suppose, to the idea of the relationship to the hereafter is very immediate and very intimate. Like in their everyday actions, these are the actions of Jannah. These are the actions of the fire. You know, they're very close to it. These people who are
definitely.
walking that
You know,
kind of path.
there's a verse which says, وَإِنَّ جَهَنَّمَ لَمُحِيطَةٌ بِالْكَافِرِينَ. Imam Ghazali spoke about that, right? That one of the verses in the Quran says, truly hellfire is encompassing the kafirin. And Ghazali talks about it, says, look, it says, it doesn't say that Jahannam will encompass or will surround the kafirin. It says it is even now. You know, that even now it is, they are surrounded by it.
It's a beautiful, beautiful thing. And I feel like that verse that the subject of this video that you're putting on right now, especially is like the idea of it almost being concealed, is that it's very immediate, the reality of the hereafter, and that how our actions are related to it. Very, very real, but it's almost concealed because we're so distracted by the dunya, by the appearances of things, rather than the reality is almost concealed, but it's actually right there before our very eyes, you know.
Yeah, no, I see what you're saying. From that spiritual angle, definitely true. Yes, I mean, the great thing about those great Sufi writers, they had some amazing. You know, you can really, when you read about their lives or some of their sayings, or you know how they interacted with the world, you do see exactly what you said, that closeness that they had to the thing. That's why, you know, I mean, in the Asian subcontinent. They used to call, you know, the title given to like sages was Hadrat. You know, if you heard the word Hazrat this, yeah. It actually comes from the Arabic, means Hadar means present, like present, somebody has come or something has come. It's Hadar. Yeah, he is here, right? So it's about that. Yeah, when you're around some people who are like this, you actually almost feel the presence of the afterlife coming closer, just because they are, you know, when you're around them, they are like that. Whereas when you're around somebody who's, you know, who's completely in ghafla, as the Quran calls, complete heedlessness, it removes you as well from it. So, you know, hang around with people who are in ghafla, and that next world, or the world which is right there, it feels so distant, right? It feels very, very, very far away. Whereas when you're with people like that, you know, people of immense spirituality, then, you know, just being next to them, it feels as if the hereafter is close. You know, it's like only a few veils away. Yeah, very interesting.
Right. Yeah, that's definitely what comes to my mind with that ayah, and mostly thanks to Ibn Ata'Allah. His work, to anybody listening, I can't recommend it enough.
Yeah.
It's fantastic poetry and prose.
Yeah. No, he's fantastic. It's fantastic. You know who the one who's sort of a modern day equivalent of that?
Who's that?
Timothy Winter. He's got he wrote quite a few works in the same sort of style, where he just wrote like small like hikam, you know, like Ibn Ata'Allah's hikam. He wrote hikam. Quite a few volumes of it now. I think he has more than one volume of them. Very interesting. When I read a few of them, very, very pertinent insight, you know.
I guess I've never read his books, only I've seen some interviews he has on YouTube and some lectures, but I should check out some of his books if it's comparable in any way.
Yeah, some of it, I think some of it, because he spent a lot of time translating, right? He translated a lot of Ghazali. He did translate some of Ibn Ata'Allah, so I guess some of that gave him wings, you know, in terms of.
Yeah, that's excellent.
Inshallah, excellent. Right, brilliant.
Yeah, that's all I got to share, really. But yeah, thanks for bringing this verse up. It's really
no problem. No problem. You can sit on if you want. We don't have anyone backstage. Nobody else here backstage, and we're still going to be on for a while. Let's see if there's anybody in the chat saying anything. Anybody got a question in the chat? But if you want to come off, yeah, you can come off. Don't make me.
No. I guess another thought I had in regards. I've been following your, I guess, a train of thought and articles on Reddit, of course, and here you bring up the idea of works and the hereafter, and the reward of the works. And I wonder if you think like this idea. I get the sense that you're talking mostly about like empirical works, almost this idea of things you do with your hands, like kindness, you say, and like, do you find that
it could be words as
I
well.
feel like
Words.
the internal state of somebody, which the internal state is what creates their works, like their faith,
Yeah.
their not just convictions of certain ideas or dogmatic like principles, but like their trust in God can
Yeah,
result
I mean,
in
exactly. That's, I mean, that's,
sincerity in their works, and I feel like there's a close
yeah.
relationship between
No,
those. You know what
definitely,
I'm
definitely. I
saying?
mean, that's what yeah, I know what you're saying. That's why I did that stream about what's called why Iman. Why Iman? Because, I have been saying that, what will cause you to enter heaven or hell are your actions, right? Your actions. Okay, so why have
Right,
Iman? And the Iman is almost like a prerequisite in this world to be able to act in that kind of way because of the way the world is. You need to have some sort of faith to be able to act in that kind of way. And I think that we have, because of the traditional teaching, we have a bigger divide of what actions are. We have this idea that you can have actions, okay, which are externally good, okay, but in reality they are not. So like you have like the
right,
thing about
right.
intentions, right? Intentions. Somebody does a good
Yeah,
deed, but if intention is not right, it will not be accepted. Okay, we do
right,
that needs to be re-examined a bit. I think that in the terms of the Quranic idea, it's just that an action is either it's only one package. Okay, when you talk about good action, it is good because the intention in it is good. Everything about it is good, right? You can't have this kind of thing. Somebody, we would say that, right? Somebody who is sort of is giving out charity, all right, for prestige. He's not giving out charity. He's buying prestige. Okay, you can't call that charity. Okay, that action
right,
is not charity. His intention is doing that is to buy prestige. So he's buying prestige. He's not giving charity. It's not the same action, right?
for
So
sure.
when we talk about the actions, right? We can look at the external action, and see. Okay, we can try to determine if somebody that's a good action or not. But when I'm talking about on the day of judgment and people will be rewarded for their actions, no, God is not fooled by an action which is done,
Correct.
which is not done, which is not with that intention. It's not considered an action, not considered a good action,
Right,
right? Buying, giving money because of prestige, it's not considered as part of the good actions anyway.
right.
You know what I mean?
Because I would
So I,
consider I
I,
would
I
consider intellectual activity and
yeah,
like
yeah.
judgments of the heart also a type of action.
Yeah, I mean, well, Quran says, اجتنبوا كثيرا من الظن إن بعض الظن إثم. Beware of much of suspicion. A lot of suspicion is
Right.
is
Yeah,
is
that's an
sin.
internal
All right,
thing. Yeah.
and there was in at the end of Surah Al-Baqarah, إن تخفوا ما في أنفسكم أو تبدوه يحاسبكم به الله. If you reveal what's in yourselves or conceal it, God will hold you accountable to it. Okay, so you do have actions of the heart, actions of the mind. These all come into that. Okay, well, when we talk about something like that, it's like what you do, which is voluntary. Okay,
Right.
sort of like voluntary. Belief is not voluntary. You can't make yourself believe something which you don't. Okay, you can
Yeah,
act
of
in
course.
faith. You can act in faith, even when you don't believe in something. You can act in faith, right? So somebody can say, okay, I don't believe this, but I will act in faith. It's like a rickety bridge across a gorge. All right, you say, okay, I don't believe this is going to hold me. Okay, but you're telling me it's going to hold me. I'm going to trust you. I'm going to act in faith, and I'm going to walk across this bridge. Okay, that's now you're acting in faith, right?
Right.
But you could still believe that you're making a mistake, but you're still doing it because you have this faith in the guidance, right? Um,
Yeah,
so
I
yeah,
see
no,
how I understand how you've gotten onto this train of thought due to the idea of this, like, I don't know, like earning points because of doing certain things and stuff. in the general traditional scene. Like there is this idea of external deeds being counted primarily. I don't know, this superficial kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, in here, I think a certain amount of counting does matter. I mean, Quran does talk about, whoever brings a good deed, he will have 10 more like it, right? So you do have numbers
Right.
involved, right? And, the example of one who gives in charity is like, is like an ear of wheat or something, right? That sprouts out 7. On each one is another 100 seeds. Okay, so you do have God multiplies. Allah يضاعف لمن يشاء, right? And من ذا الذي يقرض الله قرضا حسنا, who will give to God a goodly loan, فيضاعفه له أضعافا كثيرة, so He will multiply it for him a huge number of times. So
I guess I was referring to the idea that every letter when you recite the Quran, whether you understand it or not, is worth like some points and stuff. That kind of thing.
That kind of thing. It's more like you shouldn't be like a merchant, It's not like
right, exactly, yeah.
that kind of mentality of trying to make it a numbers game. I mean, that's something which can bring people up sort of in steps, right? It might be important for telling young people, kids and stuff like you tell them on these things, but eventually, you look at the Quran. That's certainly not the focus.
And you were talking about the scales earlier too, and the what's the surah, the Thaqulat Mawazinu, the Hawiyah.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
I feel like I had a friend, a native Arabic speaker, tell me that like Khafat Mawazinu is like cheap or invaluable, not necessarily lightweight, but not worth anything, like worthless. And Thaqulat being like valuable, of worth.
Like, but I mean, it comes from the same thing. Well, it comes from the same thing. I mean, the idea behind that is that something which is valuable on the scales, it's heavy.
Right.
So
I guess I was thinking it's just quantity versus quality. It's more about quality rather than quantity.
Well, yeah, certainly. I mean, for example, somebody who kills somebody, right? That's one action, right? That's one action, but God promised hell for it, right? So there is this idea that of course, they're not the same. Things will be weighed, there will be scales for it. Some good deeds are heavier than others. But no, the point I was bringing up about the scales, I found it very interesting that it doesn't mention about how bad deeds are heavy or light. It's always the reference points in these verses.
Khafat mawazin in that.
Yeah.
Isn't that light?
Yeah, but no. But what's the image being looked at? If you could put it in your mind, the verse saying, so whoever's scales is heavy, then they will be in paradise, or saved. And whoever's scales is light, then they will be in hell. So what are we looking at when we have those two images? We're looking at the pan of the scale. If we're thinking about two scales as we normally would, right? Like the justice, right? Left pan, right pan. Yeah, so the right pan would say, okay, that's the good deeds, right? So these verses are making us look at only the right pan, So whoever's deeds are heavy, they go to paradise. And whoever's deeds are light, they go to hell. Okay, so it's not that it's saying whoever's good deeds are heavy, they go to paradise. And whoever's bad deeds are heavy goes to hell. No, the reference point is just that.
I see.
Right? Yeah. So it's as if that other pan, I'm thinking the other pan doesn't exist, basically. That what's the reality of things, of actions, all right? That's like that verse I mentioned. فَلَا نُقِيمُ لَهُمْ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ وَزْنًا. We're not going to give any weight to these deeds, okay? Because they're bad deeds. Bad deeds will not have weight on Day of Judgment.
Yeah, they're not worth anything. Yeah.
They're not worth, exactly, they're not worth anything. So what is being measured is just the good deeds, whether it's heavy or light. I think your sound cut off or something. Suddenly I heard your voice very far away.
I didn't catch that. I had a phone call coming in.
All right. Okay.
Is there anybody else Is there anybody else backstage?
No, nobody's backstage. Just you and me right now.
All right. Well, last week I feel like you had brought up nafs and qalb. Qalb. Forgive my accent. I can't.
No, that's fine.
Sounds like I'm saying dog sometimes. But
that's fine.
the heart and the nafs. And I've been thinking about this quite a bit. Like, I feel like I really want some kind of paper or some kind of essay going over the nature of the self in the Quran, like a Quranic examination of like a really detailed. That would be beautiful. Because I've wondered, does the nafs have heart, or does the heart have a nafs, or which one is encompassed? Because I see things like the heart is the owner of aql and vision and hearing. Like, those are qualities of the heart, right? In the Quran, like. And is the heart a quality of the nafs, or is the nafs a quality of the heart? And I think of this also in the relationship. I always heard early on, or through my education in Quran and Islam, that the nafs was kind of ego. You hear this a lot in Tasawwuf. They talk about nafs in a very negative way, generally. Something you overcome. And yet, then I learned that Allah has nafs. You know, in the Quran, it talks about him having nafs. He warns you of his nafs. The nafs al-Rahman, like the merciful. He imposed written katub, or whatever it is. So I was wondering what you think about that. Do you think the nafs is a quality of the qalb, or the qalb is a quality of the nafs?
I think it's very similar. You know, I was. You made me think of a couple of things. I remember Shahrur, right? Shahrur. I don't know if you know Dr. Shahrur. Was like
Shahrur, yeah, of course, yeah.
Qur'an
familiar
scholar.
with this.
He created a lot of. I mean, he was revolutionary in a lot of his thought and stuff. But I found a lot of what he thinks difficult to follow and a bit muddled. He would like give everything a name, right? This is this, and this is not this, right? So he had like you can buy this little book which has all of his terminology, and it's just an explosion of terminology, right? And so, for example, I mean, also even Hassan al-Maliki was talking about, for example, he says, for example, jinn and jan are different, right? So what is a jinn, what is a jan, and you've got all of these kind of things. I think it doesn't come that way. That a lot of the times you can have a bunch of names. You know, it's almost like the traditional idea, a bunch of names for the same reality. And I take that by looking at just the word, for example, the different words used for a human being in the Quran. You know, insan, ins, nas, bashar. Nobody's going to imagine if this Quran was revealed to some alien species somewhere, right? And then they started analyzing these verses and saying, oh, well, you have these four different words, so they're not the same thing. These are different creatures, right? No, I mean, we're the same creature, right? We're bashar, insan, nas, ins, okay? All of these are still referring to the human being, right? They're still referring to the human being. Okay, so why different words used? Well, they call out to the different parts of the nature of that creature.
Right.
Okay.
That's what I've understood.
I wrote a few things about that because it's very interesting when the Quran used bashar, and when it uses insan, when it uses ins, there are reasons for this. Okay, so it's describing things in a certain way. Same thing with, for example, Ahl al-Kitab, right? Some people are thinking, Ahl al-Kitab, those, and then there's alladhina utul kitab, those who are given the book.
Yeah, those are given.
And then there's,
I've noticed.
And then there's alladhina ataynahum al-kitab. Okay, those who we gave the kitab. Okay, it's all just it's looking at things from a different angle. I mean, Adnan Ibrahim talks about, for example, this about Ahl al-Kitab. He says that whenever God says those who were given the book, he's like distancing himself from them, and you'll see that those verses are blaming them. All the verses which say those who were given the book in like that passive, okay, God is distancing himself from them because he's about to blame them. And you look at those verses and God is blaming them for something, rebuking them, right? Whereas all the times God says, الَّذِينَ آتَيْنَاهُمُ الْكِتَابَ, those who we gave the book, you will see that they're being praised.
Right. I can recognize that.
الَّذِينَ آتَيْنَاهُمُ الْكِتَابَ يَتْلُونَهُ حَقَّ تِلَاوَتِهِ, those who we gave the book, they recite it as it should be recited. And then when God mentions Ahlul Kitab, it's neutral. Sometimes they're being praised, sometimes they're being blamed, sometimes they're just being questioned, Yeah, يا أهل الكتاب لما تقول, oh people of the book, why do you, why don't you, لا تكون أول كافر به, don't be the first to disbelieve in it. So it's neutral. So you can have that. Now, when it comes to the original topic you mentioned, when it comes to nafs, qalb, ruh, all of these, I think the best discussion I read about it was Ghazali's. If you can get Ghazali's Ihya Ulumuddin, he talks about this, and he talks about because he was one who sort of like reanalyzed a lot of the Sufi works beforehand, and he was saying that a lot of the early Sufis, they talk about nafs as if it's just a terrible bad thing. Okay.
Right, like ego.
But for example, but if it was just this evil thing which had to be killed and stuff like this, then God would not speak about it in a good way, and He has done in the Quran. يا أيتها النفس المطمئنة ارجعي إلى ربك راضية مرضية. And then He says, no, the truth of it is that the nafs is that spiritual reality which is the human being and which knows and stuff. So He says something like this. Then He discusses aql. What is aql? Then He brings all of the ideas of what they say, etc. And then he goes, okay, this means this means that. No. In the end, he gives the same definition as nafs. He does the same thing with qalb and the same thing with ruh. And he says, really, all of these terms are talking about the same thing. They're talking about the same reality. It's just how it's being addressed from different angles. Okay, so the base nature of it, the part of it which can become base, it is called nafs sometimes. Okay, in the nafs al-ammaratun bisu, the nafs is commanded to evil. Okay, in the end, the human being is just body and spirit. Okay, body and spirit, and the spirit, the ruh, all of these are the nafs, qalb, ruh. These are all different names for the same entity, just maybe different parts of it almost, or different aspects of it.
Yeah,
right?
That's what I understand, that it's all referring to this internal reality of the human experience. Nafs, qalb, aql, ruh. Although sometimes I question whether humans have personal ruh or whatever. Or sometimes I'm not too clear on that myself. I always imagine, at least in English, the word spirit, we don't necessarily usually say our spirit, we usually say our soul, at least in my experience. Like spirit is something much loftier than soul. I don't know. Although I talk with Arabic speakers and they talk about Muslims, particularly, that ruh is something, we have a personal ruh somehow, and that confuses me because the ruh seems to be Amrullah, like kind of something higher.
From the command of Allah, yeah. And one of the first teachers I spoke to, the way he described all of it, he basically said, look, that the when God created the human being, there's the body part and then the spirit part, but these are completely different things. Okay, you've got the lowest of the low things, sort of like the earthly matter. Okay, and you've got the highest thing, which is like a command. In Amr Rabbi, Inna Ruhna min Amr Rabbi, right? And what joins them, the way that God joined them together, the mixing, that interface, that is what the nafs is. That is what the nafs is. It's the interface.
Which really confuses me when Allah describes Himself with nafs. It blows my mind.
No, but I think
what does that mean?
I think that means that nothing. I mean, it's just, it's like when God describes Himself with a hand, right? It's all it is just a part of the language.
You think so?
I mean, it's a complete, it's part of language. When God says, Yadullahi mabsuta, His hand is extended. Okay, it doesn't mean actual hand. When God talks about face, it doesn't really mean face. Okay, these are just things. When the language which God uses in the Quran for Himself, it can't be put in the same vein. So this idea that God has a nafs, like the Salafis, God has a nafs, He has a jamb, He has a side, because in the Quran God describes He has a side, right? In jambillah, He has eyes.
Well, of course, I think these are like metaphors given to us to help us understand and relate to what's being said.
The same thing.
And I think it's incredible that Allah describes us with nafs and also describes Him with nafs, maybe in a way Himself, in the same way that He'll describe He is the quality of forgiveness, yet we see that quality in ourselves, of course. That's how we relate to a lot of the names,
True, but at the same time, now I think we need to be careful, because in the end, the idea of just not nafs as in like a noun, but just nafs as in describe, anfusukum, ya ayyuhalladhina amanu alaykum anfusukum, right? Or you who believe, watch yourselves. Yeah, it's not talking about watch your
Right.
nafs. Just watch yourselves. لا يضركم من ضل إذا اهتديتم.
Yeah.
None will harm you. Nobody will harm you in misguidance if you remain guided. So it's just the word nafs in Arabic, it can just be used to mean the person. تخفي في نفسك ولا
the self.
الله مبدين, right? Yeah, it just means you. It just means the person. It doesn't mean there's actual entity nafs, right? So I think we don't get carried around by that way. But in those verses where it's talking about the human being, because it's actually being very specific, it's talking about, even when it says, يا أيتها النفس المطمئنة ارجعي إلى ربك راضية مرضية. Oh, you soul which is at peace, come back to your Lord, well pleased, one pleasing. Enter you my paradise, enter you my presence, enter my paradise. Okay, does that mean only the nafs enters the paradise? What about the qalb? What about the ruh? What about the body? No,
right.
Just
all
talking
these
about
other
the person.
things. Yeah, right.
Yeah, just talking about the person.
I picture it like there's a lot of different. Yeah, there's a lot of different forces coming together to make you as a phenomena happen, and the culmination of those events is the nafs. Kind of the culmination of all those processes that come together to make you unique. Is nafs yourself, essentially.
The person, the person, right? The person. But then other things, they're talking about different things. In the nafs al-ammaratun bisu, well, like in that verse, it's talking about, وَمَا أُبَرِّئُ نَفْسِي, and I'm not exonerating myself. Truly, the self, can push
with
to evil.
Joseph.
Right?
Yeah,
can push. It's commanded evil, ammaratun bisu. Right? وَنَفْسٍ وَمَا سَوَّاهَا فَأَلْهَمَهَا فُجُورَهَا وَتَقْوَاهَا, and by the nafs, and he who fashioned it and inspired in it its taqwa and its fujur. Okay, just talking about the human being, the internal reality of the person.
Right. I find it interesting also the linguistic connection between breath and nafs too, breathing. I think that's a pretty interesting, linguistically at least. And also the connection between ruh and wind too, which is also both these air things.
Every living thing has a spirit. Without spirit, we are dead. Yeah, that's that's one of the things, Adriana, that they used to discuss. Do things have, is the ruh, is it something which is unique to the human being? Whereas other things just have nafs, and that's what they used to say. Anyway,
well, that's really interesting in relation to the creation of Adam in Genesis in the Bible. It uses the same words in Hebrew for ruh and nafs. It talks about we blew our spirit, raush in Hebrew or whatever, ruh. We blew our ruh into him, and he became a nefesh, a nafs. He became a nafs when God, at least in the biblical, which is super interesting parallels linguistically, I think, because of course Hebrew has ruh and nafs in it as well. But
when I first hear that, what you're saying in that way, it makes me think that he blew into him of God's ruh, and then he became a nafs. It's almost like
exactly.
He breathed into him from God's spirit. He breathed into him from God's spirit, and then he became himself, sort of unique. He became separate from God, and so he became a soul. Right?
Yeah.
Became different from God. So it could be in that way.
That's pretty. Yeah, that's beautiful. But, what you were saying, Ghazali, he was saying the nafs is the like dunya side of this interface. You're saying, or like?
No. This is one of my teachers. He used to say that. One of my he said, that the joining of the ruh of the body, physical body. That interface is what it's called, what the Sufis refer to as the nafs, in terms of that needs to be controlled, because that is the part of the spirit which has become addicted to the flesh, sort of, right, to the enjoyments of the flesh. So that's the negative part when they talk about the nafs. It's that part of the ruh which is actually sort of interfacing with the physical matter, and that's what needs to be. When the Sufis talk about killing the nafs, they are talking about removing that that sort of like addiction or tight bond, right? That's what I said. When somebody has high spirituality, they have an aura because the spirit sort of like it's a bit higher removed from the human body. Whereas a person who is deeper in sort of like sensuality and stuff, no, his spirit is more shoved into his body, if you know what I mean. And that's why on the day, and that's why persons like that when they die, it's more painful. They say because it's the spirit doesn't want to come out. The angels beat the back. أخرجوا أنفسكم, right? Bring out yourselves, right? Anyway, it's interesting topics. Yeah, interesting topics.
Yeah, you could go on. That's why I think it's definitely be an interesting piece of work to go through, like the psyche in the Quran, as a really deep examination of how the Quran tackles these terms. I think would be fascinating. But here we are.
Yeah. All right, man. I think we'll start to end it there. Is anybody else wanting to come on? Doesn't look like it. Nope, nobody's on backstage. All right, brilliant.
Shoot.
Okay.
Well, thanks for having me on. I appreciate you.
No problem. Hopefully by next time the forest fires aren't.
I wouldn't count on it. I don't know. We'll see. Thank you, though.
When does it end? The forest fire season?
Well, when the rains start, but this year has been very, very dry, so the rains will usually slow it down quite a bit. But that doesn't happen until maybe October, maybe later. So that's where we're at right now. That's a whole thing. But yeah, inshallah.
All right.
All right.
Excellent.
Thank you so much.
Excellent discussion, and thank you for coming on. Jazakallah khair.
Of course. Assalamu alaikum.
All right, guys. I think we'll end it there. Let me just check the chat. Make sure I've not missed anybody. If anybody has something they wanted to ask, you can put it on now so I can see it at the bottom. Sarah, assalamu alaikum. Sarah, right, I already saw that. Rampant disorder has appeared in the land and in the sea because of what the hands of people have earned. Yes. ظهر الفساد في البر والبحر بما كسبت أيدي الناس. Yes, in Surah, I think, in Surah Ar-Rum or Surah Al-Qasas. لعلهم إليه يرجعون. Please give some insights into the oaths, different oaths mentioned in Surah Al-Shams. Okay. I haven't really thought much about that, but maybe we can. Maybe if you have some insights for us, you can bring them on for us. Don't really have much to say about that. I mean, I think I used to read the commentary of Abdullah Yusuf Ali, and he has a very nice, extended commentary that he has, and explanatory notes. He has some very nice insights into those things. They're in pairs, for example. وَالشَّمْسِ وَضُحَاهَا وَالْقَمَرِ إِذَا تَلَاهَا. The sun, the moon, and then you have the sky and the earth. So they come in pairs, right? So the duality keeps on going right up to the human being. وَنَفْسٍ وَمَا سَوَّاهَا فَأَلْهَمَهَا فُجُورَهَا وَتَقْوَاهَا. And by the soul, he who fashioned it, and he gave it its taqwa and its fujur. Assalamu alaikum. Hamid man. All right, okay, excellent. All right, I think we'll end it there. Jazakallah khair. Thanks a lot for coming over and listening to this, and those who listened afterwards. Remember, if you want, you can come on or write anything in the chat, in the comment section if you don't want to come on and share any insights you have, and I can, mention them in the next stream. Jazakallah khair, and assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.